Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
Albert Einstein has a quote that says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." We have created society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. My next guest is somebody that has been blessed with a very special gift, or several gifts, if you will. She's a fifth-generation psychic and medium based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. She's also an entrepreneur and can be found at spiritandspark.com. Joining the podcast today is Dallisa Hocking, and she's going to tell us her journey about discovering her gifts, associating that with her lineage, and where this journey has brought her to today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Dallisa Hocking from Las Vegas, Nevada. How the heck are you?
What's up, Mike?
Not much. We were having a fun little banter before the record button got pressed. How are you doing out there? How's life returning to normalcy for you right now?
Oh boy, you're asking a fifth generation psychic medium if her life is normal. It's never really normal. And every day I'm talking to different spirits and clients. And I mean, I really have a virtual nationwide business at this point. So every day is a little bit different, a little bit of spice of life, right? It got hot in Vegas though.
Really?
So yeah, I felt like it was pretty mild. And then I walked outside yesterday. I was like, what happened?
It has been so unseasonably cool where I'm at. I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's been so unseasonably cool. I'm like, when is summer going to get here?
Yeah, we'll come to Vegas. It's here.
So you kind of already set the segue, like you handed it to me on a silver platter. Let's tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what your background is, and fire away.
Yeah, this is not what I thought I would be doing for a living. Let's start there. But I did grow up in a very spiritual family. And my dad's side of the family, he comes from a lineage of his mom being able to see spirit and make predictions, and her grandmother. So we can trace it back at least 5 generations. But professionally, I had a great job in the casino industry in Vegas. I was an executive at the Cosmopolitan. That was like the last gig I had. And I remember just sitting in my office thinking, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But I didn't have the gift that my grandmother had, or at least I didn't think so. I was always just kind of intuitive and felt things, but never did I see an apparition walk through my living room, So I quit my job and I traveled for a little bit, ended up going to Texas, Fort Worth. And I worked for a business school planning events. I actually started a matchmaking and dating events company while I was living in Fort Worth. And while I was there, I ended up going to a trip. I'm going to really give you the short version here. But I ended up going and booking a trip to New York kind of last minute to attend a workshop on synchronicity, which is the belief that everything happens for a reason. There's divine order, that life is maybe a piece of orchestrated music, right? The ebbs and the dips and the way that things flow. So anyway, I go up there, and during that trip, it was fantastic. Heard from people who had studied synchronicity and the data behind it. Because some people will say, oh, well, it was just an accident. And so they broke it down for us. Well, on the trip, ironically, a trip on synchronicity, I was staying on campus most of the time, but I knew a gentleman from the Cosmopolitan who was a consultant who just so happened to have a house in the middle of the woods next to this retreat center. And he said, oh, just come stay with me. It's not a big deal. Stay the last night. So I finish up the retreat. I go to his house. I'm having dinner, watching a movie, Saved by the Bell, the unauthorized movie, in case anyone's wondering. It was amazing. And the phone rings. So Peter gets the phone, my friend, and He gets the call while I'm sitting there that his aunt, that he was very close with, had unexpectedly passed away. She had just fallen down a flight of stairs, and they were calling to let him know that she passed. So I give Peter my condolences. I don't know his family. I don't know her. And I go to bed, and he goes upstairs and he goes to bed. And wouldn't you know, that night while I'm sleeping, his aunt comes to me that had just passed away and said, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to tell my nephew I'm okay. I made it to the other side." And of course, I wake up the next morning and I'm like, "Wait, what just happened?" Like you're rubbing your eyes. And I thought, oh my God, this is what my grandmother used to tell me about all the time. I'd be a little kid in her living room, half terrified and half curious, wondering like, what did Grandma Ellie see last night? Now it happened to me. So I go in the kitchen, I tell Peter, I'm like, "Hey, listen, your aunt came through. Here's what happened." I tell him the story. And he turned to me and he said, "Really? Well, what did she look like?" Kind of testing me, right?
Right.
And I describe her hair. And he's like, "That's her." Like, okay, I'm going to fly back to Texas. It was great seeing you, but then my mind just started turning. And I thought, if his Aunt Barbara just came through, who else have I been missing, along the way? And so I started to develop it. And I would really, in a simplified way, sit down with headphones on, meditation music. I'd put, somebody's name at the top of a piece of paper, and I would just close my eyes and breathe. And whatever came forward, whatever I was sensing, I'd write it down. And then I would deliver the messages to the person. They're like, "How did you know that? Nobody knows that." Like, oh, something's happening here. So I ended up quitting my company, quitting my job, moving back to Vegas. I thought, if I'm going to try it as a psychic medium, I need to live near family, because my dad can cook. They have a hot shower. Like, I can be near my parents. And the rest is history. I moved back to Vegas and I worked for a woman out of her shop. And I started to get a pretty lengthy waiting list. So then I thought, the business brain kicked in, because I was a serial entrepreneur. I'd owned all these different companies over the years. And I thought, well, shoot, if I can't get to all these people, what if I found really good readers and I could help create a bit of a network? And so it started in that one room in that woman's shop, turned into a brick and mortar location with a team. And then I turned it into a virtual company where now I have readers all across the country.
That is fantastic. So was that your first actual memory of experiencing these gifts? Or in hindsight, after that happened, did you kind of run the gamut of previous experiences and say, "Hey, maybe this happened here"? Or you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I would say that night in New York was the game changer. That's what shifted everything. I think when I've thought about that, it's because I was in meditation for a few days, off and on. I was around a lot of like-minded people. Peter's house was in the middle of the forest where nature and high vibration is. So I think I was just the perfect opening and portal to receive the message. And I loved my grandmother dearly. She was actually getting ready to make her transition to the other side. And so I find it a bit ironic that she, in essence, kind of passed the torch to me. And, she, I'm sure on the other side, because she'll help with sessions and stuff. She'll step in as a spirit and help me figure out what people are trying to tell me. So she was very active there. But while she was alive, she never saw any of this really take place. She didn't know, in a physical sense, what I had gone on to do. Because then I ended up having a show that I was headlining in Las Vegas right before the pandemic occurred. And but thinking back, I feel like I had some gut feelings. I remember an old boyfriend of mine, his dad had passed away, and I hadn't talked to this ex in a while. But I got news that his dad had passed away, and I knew his dad and had spent a little bit of time with him and got to know him a little bit. And I remember sitting, this is years ago, sitting in my bedroom, and I could feel him walk into the room. And I remember that. I still have chills as I talk about it, right? But This experience with Peter's Aunt Barbara was like the whole wheels of the bus fell off. And I was like, wait a second, this is going to completely derail everything I've been doing professionally. Because now if I'm going to do this, I have to go publicly and say, hey, yeah, you know, everything I've been doing, scratch that. I'm a psychic medium now.
Right. Right. And not only a psychic medium, but now you're leading a network of psychic mediums.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So how do you vet some of the people that are in your network?
Oh, great question. Because a lot of companies don't do this.
Right.
And I feel like if you're going to work for my company and represent my brand, you better be good. So I have people that will often say, oh, you know, I want to read, I want to do tarot cards, I want to be an astrologer, whatever it is, whatever their modality is. And I do a Zoom video with them. And I say, all right, do a session for me.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And so some people get really scared and intimidated. I actually think I'm probably the easiest person to read because I'm so open. But they have to get through the entire full length session. And I have to know that they're truly connected to my energy and picking up on information that's valid. And then if they do, then they're invited to come and join the team. So that's how it works.
Sure. So is there something about a person's, I would say, personality profile that kind of aligns with having psychic or medium abilities that, like, you know, we're all cut from a different cloth to a certain extent, right? So what is the personality profile of a psychic like?
They're usually very sensitive to emotions. Right. And you can call it empathic. You know, some people have heard that term. So you can kind of know or identify if you're empathic if you walk into, let's say you walk into a party.
Sure.
And you can start to sense as you're walking around the party, who's happy, who's angry, you know, and you're kind of feeling that in your own body. That is actually a psychic ability. So that would be the first clue that you can develop it. I think anybody can develop into a modality, whether it's being a psychic or a medium, card reader, whatever it is. But it's just like a muscle. So like any muscle, you've got to work it in order to tone it and make it work with you. Yeah, I would say the emotions, the sensitivity to emotions. I once heard the price of being sensitive is being sensitive.
Right.
And so, you know, imagine I'm doing readings for clients during the day, and then something happens in my personal life, and I feel it. I'm not going to say I do. I feel it a lot more than your average person would. And, you know, it's probably why I'm 40 and single. Not because I'm a train wreck by any means, but I am so sensitive to what's happening. And the men that date me know, like, oh, she's going to know like everything that's going on. And so I have to make sure that I'm in a relationship with somebody who's very transparent, can just be completely honest and have really frank conversations and not be afraid of that. If somebody's trying to hide something, whether romantic or a friendship or a work situation, they generally like to steer clear of me.
I was going to ask you, like, how do you differentiate between your skills as a medium or just being very hypersensitive to social cues? Like, how do you differentiate those two?
Yeah, for the most part, I can successfully go into a group setting or a concert or, you know, go on a trip, a cruise ship, whatever it is, right? Because it's all about frequency. And so if I know that I'm going into a group situation or I'm off duty, I can just settle into the energy and bring my energy back down. But if I need to raise my frequency in order to do a session, there's different things I can do. You know, I can chant, I could listen to meditation music, I could put on essential oils in different chakra points of the body, drinking a lot of water. So there's things that I can do to amp it up. So I'm very conscious that when I'm not on duty, I bring it back down. And, you know, the guides that I work with on the other side, they're pretty respectful. They know not to bring me information or things when I'm not working, because frankly, when I'm working, it feels like I'm sticking my finger in a light socket because I'm running energy through my entire body in order to be that conduit and to bring forward information. And so you can't keep that level of energy drain going 24/7, or you'll just crash and burn. It's why sometimes you'll hear about psychics, like they'll work for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they do something else. And it's because they've burned themselves out more than likely.
Sure, absolutely. So coming off of a year like 2020 was, and good chunk of 2021 has been, people are a lot more sensitive to the idea of mortality. So have you noticed an uptick in business and consultations because of this?
Oh, yeah. In 2019, I was actually reminded of this a couple of weeks ago. I was having lunch with somebody who used to work for me. And he said, "Do you remember the pep talk she used to give us in 2019? I said, "Well, what did I say?" Because the way that my messages work is it flows through me. So I don't necessarily hold on to it. I might remember 5% of a reading after it's done. And he said, "Oh, yeah, well, in 2019, you told all of us that we needed to get ready because 2020 was going to be a year like we've never seen, and people were going to need us more than ever before. And it was going to get really rough, really rocky, and to just prepare ourselves for what was to come. And that I had predicted all these, food shortages and issues with worldwide medical stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." You don't think about it because you're like going through it then. But yeah, I did. I saw a lot of that in 2019. So 2020, I would say that there was a lot of like fear at first because people didn't know, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to have enough food? So there was a lot of survival mode going on at first. But then the later you got into 2020 and for sure 2021, people are gangbusters wanting to know, well, what should I do? A lot of people are moving. A lot of people are breaking up right now. And they want to know what's the best pathway forward. So I'm getting a lot of requests for people that want psychic readings, which is the predictive reading, right. And then the mediumship where they actually want to hear from somebody on the other side. And I think that is also increased because people want a little bit of hope. They want to hear from a mother, a grandmother, whoever they were close to say, it's going to be okay. Right. And so it helps kind of subside that fear. But absolutely, it's been the busiest we've ever been.
You look at the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been so politicized when it's a public health crisis. It's not a political crisis, but the recovery of COVID-19 is a mental health crisis. But the thing that everybody forgets about is the spiritual side of it. How are you going to come out of this and be a whole person? And that's your connectivity with your physical health, your mental health, and everything that's going on around you and how you adapt to that. Has there ever been a time where you've surprised yourself with a reading?
Oh, that's a good question. The one that pops in immediately was one actually very early on in my career. And I sat down in the room. The lady comes in. I didn't know her. And she said, "Oh, yeah, I found you online." "Okay, perfect. Sit down. What would you like to do today?" "Okay, I want to do mediumship." "Okay, let's go ahead." Because I've got to actually adjust the frequency higher if it's for mediumship. So I sit down, I close my eyes and take a few deep breaths. And I start seeing this like horrifying thing play out in front of me. I see people running and I see a gun and I see, lots of really horrifying symbols and imagery that's playing out like a daydream in front of me. And so I'm describing all of this to her. And it turns out that her friend had just died in the 1 October shootings in Las Vegas. And he came through, had messages for her. And it hit me harder than any reading I've ever done. And I cried the whole way home. Our community was really in a hard spot after that. And I have a close family member that works for the police department in Las Vegas. And so it hit really close to home. And I felt honored and humbled that I guess I was selected to deliver these messages from him, even though he had just passed away a few days before. And that she knew exactly who it was. The messages made sense. And that it gave her some peace to know that her friend, even though he was trying to help save people at the concert, that even though he was killed, that he still lived on, in a different way, of course, but that there was peace there.
Wow. So whenever you experience things like that, who do you turn to when you feel stuck?
That's a great question. I had an amazing mentor who unexpectedly passed away in September. I'd usually go to her and talk through it. I have another mentor who lives in North Carolina, and I talk to her, about what's going on. I like to go into meditation. I feel like I can be introspective enough to figure out what's going on or how to release it. And of course, working with my grandmother and spirit guides to help me let it go. Luckily, I have really amazing people that work for my company. And so I can say, hey, can I talk this through with you? And I also have a private members only group called the Spark Plug. And I did a Zoom session earlier today, and I jump on and we just talk. Everybody who wants to can just jump on, and we actually talk about what's happening in the world so that people aren't afraid. And I can sit there and say, listen, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And it's not to make you more fearful, but it's to help you prepare your mindset and to help you get, extra water, gas in your car, make sure you have non-perishable food on hand, and get everything ready so that when something does happen, you're not going to be as fearful as the people who aren't maybe paying attention or listening to their intuition. So we do that. It's called Real Talk. We do that once a month. And I think that helps. It helps me to get it out and to talk about it, but it also helps them because they can feel connected to a community.
Sure, absolutely. It's elevating your conscientiousness. So what does a typical meditative practice look like for you?
Yeah, great question. I actually just recorded a 21-day meditation challenge for my members. And so I think they're about a third of the way through. And I used what I like to do the meditations for them, except their meditations are about 10 minutes. So that is great and perfect. A lot of the research around meditation says that the maximum benefit comes when you do meditation for 20 minutes. But I'm of the mindset, I'd rather have you do 2 minutes than nothing at all. And it's amazing what you can do when you can set your timer on your phone for 2 minutes and you close your eyes, you sit in a chair, put your feet on the ground, and just focus on your breath for 2 minutes. It will completely change your energy. One thing that I like to do is breathe in and say to myself the word let, and breathe out of my mouth and say to myself the word go. So let go, like over and over until I feel like the energy has lifted. And the good news is you can do that anywhere, right? So if you're at the grocery store and somebody's getting on your nerves, and you can just let go until you bring it back down. I love guided meditations. It's generally what I teach. And that's taking people into, a mountain or to the forest. And okay, now you're walking through. I find that that's, for me, the easiest method of meditation, because if I'm taking a class and I'm listening to someone's voice, I can follow along with them. And the story and I start to become one. And that just makes it so much easier. So start where you're at. You don't have to be perfect at it, and you're not going to screw it up.
Right. So in the past year, I know for myself, uptick in anxiety, everything that's gone on, as I'm sure it is for many people. So a lot of my meditative practices happen right before bedtime, putting on rain sounds, just laying back, nice cool room, breathing, just listening to the sound, and just taking myself mentally out of where I'm at and putting myself someplace else. So that's something that works well for me. What's more harmful for your industry? Is it skeptics or is it frauds?
Oh, frauds for sure, because there's so many people that claim to be a healer, a fortune teller. Like, I've heard so many stories, and Las Vegas is inundated, you know? they'll say, oh, come in, I'll do a session for $25, whatever it is. You get there and then they're like, oh, you have this curse or you have this being attached to you and you're going to pay me $500 and I'll get rid of it. I mean, that is standard, like it's so many different pockets of Las Vegas, but also around the country. And it's so unfortunate because people actually think that they have a problem and then they pay it because they think they have to, and it's a total scam. So I would say the people that are fraudulent give us a really bad name. Yeah. And it's bad. It's terrible, right? So like in Las Vegas, you have to go through hoops upon hoops to even get a license to do readings here because it's so fraudulent. The skeptics I can deal with. And I usually don't get a lot of skeptics these days. But I will say, I was at an event. I remember this guy came up to me, this is a long time ago, and I was doing readings and, kind of like 10-minute mini readings. And he came up and he's like, all right, show me what you've got. I don't believe in any of this stuff. And I'm like, I closed my eyes. I looked, I remember I got a few messages, but I don't remember what the messages were. I say it to him and he just completely destroys everything I said. And I said, you can get up and walk away now. I'm not going to do any more for you. And I shut him down. And I think once I actually started sticking up for myself and not putting up with the skeptics, it's like the universe said, okay, Dallisa, you learned your lesson. We won't send you as many anymore. But yeah, it's the frauds for sure.
Absolutely. I was just going to ask you how you handled the skeptics, and you just answered that question perfectly.
Yeah. And I've been asked about that before on TV. Like when the media usually interviews me, they're like, well, how do you handle the skeptics? And I say, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, it legitimately doesn't matter if somebody believes me or not, because your opinion of me changes nothing about my gift and what I'm doing for people. So you can sit there and be a skeptic, but I don't care.
For my day job, I manage people. And one of the things I talk about in my day job one of my lines is, you are an individual, but so is everybody else. So we're not going to talk about religion. We're not going to talk about politics, because your ideals might be different than mine. And that's perfectly okay.
For sure.
So what do you think your mission in life is overall?
Oh boy. I've had my astrology chart done so many times by astrologers that I think I've figured it out now, right? It's one of those things that you look back on your life and you go, oh wow, they were trying to like get me here the whole time. Actually, quite literally, my astrology chart is all about like being a psychic, being a medium. Like it's comical, really. So if I had had it done when I was a kid, I think I would have known, right? But I think that spirit, the universe, had to get me through different periods of my life to learn different things and own different businesses and meet different kinds of people in order to get me positioned to actually do this job really well. So everything that I did before this, in hindsight, feels like a warm-up. And I think I would tell your listeners with that anything that they've been through in their life, it's not wasted. I hear all the time, like from people, oh, I want to be a healer, or I want to go back to school and do X, Y, and Z, but I don't know if I can. I've made so many mistakes. I have so much debt, whatever the excuse is, right? But I feel like everything that you've been through in your life is preparing you for what's to come. And if you can keep that mindset and that perspective, you can do anything you want. But we are usually our own worst enemies, and we are self-sabotaging on the regular. So if we can just get the heck out of our way and set a goal and actually take steps each day to get there and believe that we're worth it, believe that we can have it, we can legitimately have anything.
So I was thinking about this today. We are already in the 6th month of 2021. Could you believe it?
No.
If you were to offer a reading for the state of the world for the remainder of the year, what would you say?
Oh, boy. I hope everyone's just listening to this with a grain of salt and a big smile on their face and knowing that we're going to get through this, okay? Because sometimes what I predict, because I do a weekly prediction show on YouTube, and what I will often say, at least lately, has felt a bit dense, a bit negative. But what I feel is happening is we're going through a lot of breakdowns that's going to lead to the breakthrough. Okay. In the tarot deck, there's a card called the Tower. So when I was pulling a card to represent 2021, the Tower is the card that I pulled. So some of your listeners might know what that card is, but it's basically a picture of a tower burning to the ground and people jumping off of it. And I was shuffling, and that's the card that came out. And it's basically the energy of your world is going to shift. Things around you are going to change. You are going to go through a lot of transformation. The people around you are going to go through a lot of transformation. Imagine that everyone's homes are burning down, symbolically, of course, and everyone's going to handle that stress and that trauma differently. And so some people are going to be expressing that through anger and rage. Some people are going to be showing that through compassion and really trying to do something good for their communities. So we're going to see it play out, in different ways depending on who we're around. But I do think for the rest of this year, we've really got to watch food and food shortages, which is really peculiar because earlier today, I was talking about the ransomware on my member Zoom. And I said, I heard when that happened the first time with that oil, the oil pipelines, I heard clairaudiently through my ear that it was practice and that there was going to be more. They wanted to see what would happen and what they would get. And so, even today, there was an announcement that one happened, right? Another one, suspected to be the same group. So I think we're going to be seeing more of that. Earthquakes keep popping in, like major. I really feel like there's going to be some big earth natural disasters this year that are going to unfortunately not bode well for the locations they're in. Let's see what else. Yeah, it's going to get funky with, and I am not a financial analyst. I am not a real estate agent. And I know that real estate's really hot, but something does not quite feel right with that. And when I look at the energy, it feels that people are going to start to get really angry because some of the things that they've been partaking in are no longer going to be there, or what it was is shifting. So whether it's rent or unemployment, so people are going to handle that stress differently. So I'm seeing a lot of escalation and anger and violence, unfortunately. And I do feel that there's a lot of international eyes on us as an easy target. And I do think that there are people within our own country that are also seeing us as an easy target. So we're going to get hit from like a couple of different directions this year, but I don't want people to be afraid. I just want them to recognize that, in my opinion, we all decided to be here right now. Like when we were on the other side, because really we're just on our way home, right? So like when we were on the other side and we said, hey, listen, I want to go in for 2020, 2021, 2022. And everybody standing around the spirits were like, but I want to go in. So you have to kind of have the perspective that you opted in to come right now, because the amount of growth and soul acceleration that you will have last year, this year, the next couple of years is going to be like nothing we've ever seen before.
Right. We're all tearing it all down so we can build it back up better than what it was before.
Yeah, we're going to be the Phoenix rising.
This has been fantastic. So tell my listeners where they can find you online.
Yeah, spiritandspark.com is the website. Over on YouTube, Spirit and Spark TV, and Facebook and Instagram also at Spirit and Spark. Pretty easy. Try to keep it, consistent.
From now until the end of August, you use the coupon code Mike Podcast, all in caps, at spiritandspark.com.
Yeah. Can I add, that's for the Spark plug. So it's a 30-day free trial, and that's where you can join my member Zooms. We've got free gifts from the practitioners, people doing card readings and meditations and stuff in there. So it gives you a 30-day free trial if you use Mike Podcast as your coupon code when you click on the Spark plug.
Awesome. We have to do this again. Will you be on the show again?
Oh, heck yeah. We definitely need to talk about it because this world's going to just get topsy-turvy. So we need to let your listeners know what's coming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Dallisa. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm glad to meet you.
Yeah, you rock, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
That was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to having Dallisa back on the show in the future. Once again, you can find her at spiritandspark.com. Use the coupon code MikePodcast, all capital letters, and you can be a part of the Spark Plug group for 30 days without a charge. Sounds like she's pretty easy to find on social media as well. Everything correlating to Spirit and Spark. Check it out. Check it out. This is a lot of fun. And while you're checking out other social media, make sure you check out Caught on the Mic on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Just do a search in your search bar for Caught on the Mic, M-I-K-E, and give me a like, follow, subscribe, whatever. Would love to connect with you there. Make sure you give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever your podcasts can be found. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.